So when we launch an object into the air, we call it a projectile. Projectiles travel in parabolas. Being technical, Austin, if the Earth is flat, they travel in parabolas, but we're pretending the Earth is flat. We're ignoring the curvature of the Earth. We're not firing projectiles for hundreds of kilometers. But it's much, which by the way means another way to find the highest point of a projectile would be to find the vertex. Remember doing that completing the square thing that you learned in math last year? Not a good way to do it. It's much easier to use vectors. We break each projectile's velocity into horizontal and vertical components. So example 1 says, break the following velocity vector into its vertical and horizontal components. Okay. There's Vx. There's Vy initial. Color. Why did I put an initial on the Vy but not on the Vx? How come I put an initial on the Vy but not on the Vx? Yeah. This one isn't changing. A is 0 horizontally, and I'll remind myself by never putting an initial or a final. It's the same no matter what. This one changes, and I'll remind myself of that by putting an initial when it's an initial, or if it's later, I'll put a final on there. This 24, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. What about Vy initial? What about Vx? Adjacent? Vx, A and H. Which trig function? A and H, which trig function? Cos, you say. You're correct. In fact, it would be this. Cos 36 equals Vx over 24. Alex, how would I get the Vx by itself? How would I move the 24 over? $19.416. I'll write 19.4. Since all they want we is to go write this and then stop, I'll go to 3 sig figs in my answer. Which trig function is Vy? The only sin was when you called it a sin. It's a sine. It's sine. Hey, wait. Put your pencils down, look up. What was Vy? Which trig function? What was Vy? Which trig function? Everybody? Sine? What was Vx? Cos. Hey, Mr. Duick. Lesson 6. Mr. Duick. What was Vy? Which trig function? What was Vx? This was horizontal. Mr. Duick, when we're dealing with components for velocities, will Vx always be cos and will Vy always be sine? Mr. Duick, do you have a stupid way that I could remember that Vy is sine, not sin, that Vy is sine, that Vy is sine? If I was a good teacher, I'd have a stupid way for you to remember that Vy is sine. I don't. And I would also have another way for you to remember that Vx is cosine. Of course I would. I'd have something that would work, wouldn't I? You can use that if you want. It's a cheap hack, but because that doesn't work, by the way, for the river question or the airplane question, but because I'll always be giving you a side view of a projectile and I'll always give you the angle from a horizontal line, I just will. If you're looking for a cheap hack, the vertical Vy, the trig function will be sine. And if you forget, you can do the trig, opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse and prove it. But Vy is going to be sine and Vx of cos is going to be cos. Use it if you want. So if I actually crunch the number, it's going to be 24 sine 36. Common silly mistakes again. People put the theta where the 24 is, and they put the velocity where the 36 is because they're just typing in a hurry. Just be really careful. There is so much room to make silly mistakes here. 14.1. When you're studying for a test, these two charts here are nice summaries. This is what you should know. This is something that might be worth looking at when you're studying for your test. For horizontal motion, Vx is constant because Ax is 0. Or because Ax is 0, Vx is constant. Or because Vx is constant, Ax must be 0. Those two imply each other. What that means is that d equals Vit plus a half At squared just becomes dx equals Vxt. No more quadratic. It means if you know the time of flight, you can find the horizontal distance, also called the range. Or if you know the range, you can find the time of flight by just dx over Vx. Get the t by itself. Vertically, Vy changes. Ay is technically a constant. It's negative 9.8. So d equals Vit plus a half At squared. Sadly, nothing vanishes here. dy equals Vyt plus a half. I should have put a little Ayt squared. I'll have to fix that. But you do know at the top of its arc, as Sarah pointed out, for a split second, Vy final, there will be 0. Don't think V overall will be 0. It's still got, in fact, you know what? At the top of its arc, its overall velocity is just the Vx component right then. How fast is it going? Vx for a split second, because that's all that's left. So does that mean that V equals 0? No. V overall just equals Vx at the top. Also, if we start on the ground and end on the ground, Vy initial equals negative Vy final. If you find your vertical component, and Braden, you notice it worked out to 6.93, you're going to hit the ground at negative 6.93. Now, it only works if you're starting on the ground and ending at the ground, which is why I said cliff at an angle is the toughest, because you're got an angle, components, and you're not starting and ending on the ground. So there's no symmetry, there's no shortcuts. Last, if you're beginning from a vertical height, a cliff, the ground is below you. This means your final vertical displacement will be negative. Put your pencils down, look up. I mentioned that the horizontal velocity is constant. There you go. You'll notice the vehicle is not moving ahead or behind the trampoliner while they're in free fall. They were moving at a constant velocity with the object. They stay together. Okay. Mr. Dueck, yes? You said that projectiles travel in parabolas. Yeah. But I've seen some projectiles that seem to wobble. You know, that's true. There's some objects that when you throw them, because they're spinning, they wobble. Have I been lying to you? For a tennis racket, for example, or I know as a basketball player and as a basketball coach, the kids at the beginning, before a game, you'll take a ball, you'll give it a spin, and some of the balls are warped. They're wobbling. You don't use that to play with. That goes back in the ball bin, but you're not using that as your game ball. Okay, good point. So this is from MIT. Really what I should be saying is the center of mass of an object travels in a parabola. So here's some objects. A badminton racket. You notice it kind of wobbled. This one will wobble even more. And this one here, this is a circle that has a weight on one edge. This will really wobble. Okay? However, now we're going to show those same objects and we're going to have the center of mass painted orange. Their center of mass is what travels in a parabola. So first, the badminton racket. No wobble, even though it was spinning around that. Here's that other object, that little club that they threw. And then the last one. Oh, sorry, here's the little clubby thing that they threw. So here's that disk. There's the center of the object, not the center of mass. And you'll notice the center of the object wobbles like crazy. But now we're going to show you the center of mass. No wobble. So typically when we're throwing projectiles, let's assume they're nice bowling balls or cannonballs, and the center of mass is the center. There's no weight glued on one edge to make them off kilter, for what it's worth. Had a kid ask me that a couple years ago, and I thought I should add that to my notes. Here's today's lesson. Projectiles from cliffs at angles. You know what you're going to spend most of your time finding? Time. In fact, if the question gives you time, it's going to fall apart. You're going to want your calculator out, and we're going to be going, sadly, full-bore quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Or you can use your solver. If you don't have a solver, and if you're shaky on the quadratic formula, I can show you a workaround during a blended session. There is a workaround. It's about 3 lines longer, which is why I don't teach it. But I gotta be honest, if I have a crappy calculator, it's the method that I'll use because I know I can get it right on a lousy calculator where I might make a mistake using the quadratic formula on a lousy calculator. What do I mean by a lousy calculator? One of those ones where you gotta hit everything backwards, where you don't go square root 9, you go 9 square root, but those, you know, the really cheap ones. Okay, there are several strategies to find time. Option 1, find the time to the top, find the time to the bottom, and add them together. Meh. Option 2, doing it all at once and not having to do any extra work all at once. My preferred method. That's what I'm going to teach you. Option 3, find the time to the top, double it to get the time back down to the cliff level, and then find the rest of the time to hit the ground and add all 3. That's, in terms of pure math, the easiest, but it's by far the most work. So I'm going to say no, no. You can do it all at once. I like example 1. I like example 1. Example 1 is a nice question. Okay. Why would I say that? Could be on the test. Did you hear me say it's going to be on the test? You're the kind of student that notices those things? Okay, good, 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 good. Here we have a cliff at an angle. Did I say angle? Okay, we're going to do components. We're going to do a t-table. So I'm going to do my t-table, yoink, right here. X, Y. I'm going to write down my 2 physics no-brainers, even though I haven't actually read the question yet. AX equals AY equals, good. I've written something down. I feel better. Now I'm going to read the question. What does part A want me to find? Time of flight. Okay. Did I say angle? Components. So I'm going to break this up into Vx and Vy initial. Wait. Vy. Which trig function? Okay. So Vy initial is going to be 50 sine 30. Double check me. I think that works out dead even to 25. Because I think sine of 30 is 0.5. Does it? Yes? And for the rest of this question, you definitely want to be following along on your calculator too. Well, if Vy is sine, can someone tell me which trig function Vx is? Of course it is. So it's going to be 50 cos 30. 50 cos 30. And I get Vx is You know, I'll round off after the 1. Next to it is a 2. That gives me 5 sig figs. I mean, here with the 0, you could go to 4 sig figs. That's just a lovely 0 there. I typically will go to 5 if I can, because I'm going to use this to find other stuff. So 43.301. I don't care if you put units or not in your t-table. I'm looking for the numbers, though. And check your units along the way. But I looked, I don't see kilometers or hours or anything yucky. And I'm not going to try and trick you that way. Okay. Right now, I know 2 things horizontally. And right now, I know 2 things vertically. I need 3 things to find the 4th. What else do I know? What else has the diagram given me that I haven't used yet? Which distance? Vertical or horizontal? Okay, I'm going to make a mistake. Tell me if you spot it. Why is dy equals 60 wrong? Good, I'm glad none of you know. So this is a bad mistake to make. First of all, it's not a distance, it's a displacement. So I'll put a vector on there to remind myself of that. Why can't the displacement possibly be 60? Yeah. No. What? Aren't we ending up below from where we started? Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem, Alec. In Physics 11, if you missed that negative, you would get an error on your calculator. In Physics 12, because we're solving a quadratic and you always get 1 positive time and 1 negative time, you probably won't get an error on your calculator. You'll have no way of catching it. So just pay attention. A vertical displacement from a cliff is negative. Negative. Which column do I know 3 things in? Vertical. How am I going to find time? Vertically. So I'll go t equals question mark in the vertical column to remind myself I'm doing this vertically, but this is going to take enough room. I'll actually do part A here. I'm looking for an equation that has a d, a vi, an a, and a t in it. There is one. Which one? You're on a roll. I'm impressed. Aside from your voting record today. Sorry. So maybe you're now just breaking even. Maybe we should say that. Yeah. And I'm going to be fussy. It's going to be dy equals vy initial t plus a half a y t squared. I won't take marks off if you don't put the y's there, but they'll take care of themselves because there's so much room to make silly mistakes. I want to reinforce vertical. Okay? Common mistakes. Kids say VI is 50. No. We're never going to use the slanty. So, does anything cancel? Are there any zeros? This is a full bore quadratic. So I'm going to plug and chug. It's going to be negative 60 equals 25t minus 4.9 t squared. AJ, where'd the minus 4.9 come from? Calvin, where'd the... I apologize. I could tell I'd lost a few of you. I did the 0.5 times negative 9.8 in my head. Sorry. AJ, what kind of an equation is this? How do you know? Got it squared. What's step 0? Make it equal to 0. That's why I always, when I taught it, called it step 0. It was, again, one of the things I'm good at as a teacher is coming up with dumb ways to remember things. I think that's one of my strengths. So, yeah, Mr. Duick, some really dumb ways. Oh, I got an even dumber one coming up when we get to forces. If you thought sine is y was good, well, you see my other dumb one. So I'm going to go positive 4.9 t squared minus 25t, and the negative 60 stays on the left, so it just drops down like a domino. You could plus the 60 over as well. I just tend to make the squared term, the quadratic term, positive. Now, those of you that have solvers, race ahead and solve for t. Those of us that do not, Okay. T equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's going to be positive 25 plus or minus the square root of negative 25, that's gravity, squared minus 4 times 4.9 times negative 60 all over. AJ, I'm going to go 2a in my head and get the 9.8 again on the bottom. I can multiply anything by 2 in my head, pretty much. I'm going to try doing this in one step. So, for those of you who don't have the built-in solvers, is this a fraction? Yep. More than one thing on the top? Yeah. Bracket. 25 plus square root bracket. So look up. Here's Mr. Duick's cheap hack. I know the 25 is negative, but what's a negative squared? What's a negative times a negative? Because I know it's going to cancel, I always write it. I never type it. So I haven't made a typo when I type 25 squared. I'm just that lazy. Close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 9.8. Hey, did you get as one of your times 6.8814479995? And those of you with solvers got that? Okay. If you did not, we need to practice with the quadratic. What I would recommend is leave it, try it again in about 20 minutes, and if you're lucky, you won't make the same silly typo that you did this time. I'm going to carry some extra sig figs. I'm going to go 6.8814. And then I'm going to report my final answer to 3 sig figs. But I carried some extra sig figs just in case I need them. Oh, there's also a negative time. Now, you also get negative 1.78, yes? But we reject that, much like Alec trying to dunk. Reject. Right? I gotta be honest, I don't know if I will ask you part A. What's part B you want me to find, Kieran? I think on the test, I'll just ask you to find that, and I'll expect you to clue in. Even though it says find the range, I'm going to spend most of my time finding range. Horizontal or vertical? Yeah, range is the same as dx. So, and that's what I didn't give you much room. I'm going to make a little note here. They want me to find. Okay. I've scrolled to the next page, but you, I think, have them both in front of you. Kieran, what was Vx? What was Ax? That's only 2 things. I need 3 things to find. Oh! Because time is a scalar, it can go in this column as well. 6 point. I'll write 6.88, but you all know I'm going to use my answer button. Or the extra digits. Those of you that have the built-in solvers, by the way, play around with it. Your calculator might actually store those answers in an X or in a Y if you have alpha keys. I think they do. I just don't know from model to model how they do that, but figure it out. Kieran, I'm looking for an equation that has a D, a V, an A, and a T in it. There is one. Holy smokes, Mr. Duick. Is it the same equation as this one except with X's? Oh, but what's AX? So it modifies to just dx equals vxt. No need to do plus a half at squared. You're starting to see why last year I kept saying don't waste my time whenever you read out a 0 term? Okay. And are you also, Kieran, seeing why I barely gave you any room? I gave you lots of room to find time because I know it's full quadratic. Here, it's 2 lines. It's going to be 43.301 times, I'll write 6.88, but I'm going to use my answer button. Oh, I got to bring back the other answer. Now I've got my answer button. Times 43.301. Kieran, did you get 298? Units, it's a distance displacement technically. Yep. And the positive tells us it went forwards. Yeah. Okay. What's C want me to find? Time to reach the what? Top. Do you think I'm going to solve that vertically or horizontally? Vertically. So I'm not going to do the full t-table. I'm only going to put vertical values here. So I'm going to make a little note. This wants me to find t top. Vertically, AY is negative 9.8. Was there a VY initial? And if so, what was it? It should be in your t-table, I hope. Oh, oh yeah, that's right. It worked out evenly. 25. That's only two things. What? I got to be really, really fussy. Technically, VF is not 0. VYF is 0. I'll give you that. But it's still moving sideways. Okay? Okay, Elias, which equation? Zero minus 25 all over negative 9.8. Zero minus 25 all over negative 9.8. Am I getting a negative answer? I should get a, oh, it's a negative divided by negative. 2.55? No, yeah. Am I wrong? I'm right? Okay. Probably the toughest, or maybe the second toughest question is part D here. Austin, what does D want me to find? Sorry? Nope. You know what VX final is? VX final is 43.301. Sorry. Just read to me. What does part D want me to find? Read it out loud. 4 words. Say it again, loud and proud. What is the answer not?
0.
Don't tell me it's 0. Again, I'll tell you to do a belly flop off your desk onto the cement. If it hurts, I don't think your impact velocity was 0. But you know what? I'm going to argue, Austin, that I can draw it. I think the impact velocity looks something like that. It hits the ground. It might be steeper. It might be shallower. But I'm telling you, it hits the ground at an angle. Did I say angle? Let's try that again. It hits the ground at an angle. Did I say angle? Okay. I'm going to break this up into horizontal and vertical. I'll call this vertical not V initial. That's V final, VY final components. Oh! And I know one of these. What's Vx the whole way through this strip? 43.301. So this slanty, this is the impact velocity. I'll call it V imp. Where will theta go, by the way? Top left or bottom right? Color. Well, it seems to me if I can figure out the final vertical velocity, not 0, if I can figure out the final vertical velocity, I can use Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA and I'm good. So I'm going to do a little sidebar over here. A vertical table. I don't care about horizontal. AY was negative 9.8. Was Vy initial 25? I'd like to find Vy final. That's only two things. I need three. What? Which time? The total time of flight, which was 6 something. I'll write 6.88, but I'll carry whatever. What were the extra sig figs? 6.88, what? 6.8814? So I don't have this on my answer button anymore, so I better write it up. Hey, I'm looking for an equation that's got a V final, a V initial, an A, and a T in it. There is one. Yep. Yep. Oh, and is the VF by itself already? Wow! So you're telling me Vy final is going to be Vy initial plus AYT? Let's see what we get. Vy in a 25. Ooh, what direction is this projectile traveling? Upwards or downwards? What, am I expecting a positive or a negative velocity answer? Okay. Now, another follow-up question. I might have said, what's the velocity after 1 second? I know it reaches the top after 2.55. After 1 second, I know it's still on the way up. I would have got a positive Vy when I solved for that, and I would know, yeah, it's on the way up. We'll do one like that later. But for now, 25 plus negative 9.8 times 6.8814. 6.8814. Double check for typos. When it hits the ground, do you guys get negative 42.43772? And I'm going to put that on my triangle, 42.43772. Mr. Duick, how come you didn't put the negative? Psst. I did put the negative, but I put the negative, almost pointed this back at myself, that would have been dumb. I put the negative by pointing the arrow down. That's where the negative is. You could put it there too, but I got a down arrow, negative. How can I find the magnitude of this? Looking for where that starts the letter P and rhymes with Pythagoras. Pythagoras? Okay, we can do that. So, here we go. V impact is going to be 43.301 squared plus 42.43772 squared. Square root. A magnitude of 60.6. At this Vy final, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Opposite? What about Vx? Which trig function? Oh, you know, by the way, look up for a second, everybody. How big is Vx? 43.301. How big is Vy final? 42.4. Are those pretty close? I'll bet you the angle's almost 45 degrees because this is almost an isosceles triangle. So a bit of a built-in error check. I'll bet you're going to get probably either 44 point something or 46 point something. Just a guess because it's almost isosceles. I didn't finish writing. 42.43772 all over 43. Am I right with my guess? Shift tan, 42.43772 divided by 43.301. Yeah, oh, there you go, 44.4, almost 45 degrees. Direction. Well, 44.4. Okay, you all caught up? What's the direction? If you said south of east, I won't take marks off, but I'll give you a stink eye. Just because my ceiling is not north and my floor is not south. Okay? So here's how we describe it. We're looking at a side view of a projectile. So there's up and down. Here's how we would describe this particular angle. We would use the phrase below the horizontal. And that means that if you draw a horizontal line, the 4.4 degrees is below it. It implies a side view. As opposed to this picture here, if I'd given this to you as a written question, I would have said is being launched at 30 degrees above the horizontal. And again, if you called this one north of east, I wouldn't take marks off, but I'd kind of give you a bit of a stink eye. Well, let's pause. Did I teach you anything new? I hope not. And don't kid yourself, Braden. The math is getting pretty heavy duty. And we're getting multi-step, which means, is there plenty of room to make a mistake? Yep. Is there plenty of room to make a calculator typo? Yep. Don't. That's all I got. Turn the page. I like example 2. I like example 2. Example 2 is a nice question. Nicole, what does example 2 want me to find? dx. I see an angle. Components. I see a cliff, negative 20 meters. I'll remember that. All righty, here we go. I'll do my t-table right here. Horizontal, vertical, ax equals 0. My physics no-brainers. Ay equals negative 9.8. Nicole, which trig function is Vx going to be? Which trig function is Vy going to be? So which trig function is Vx going to be? Of course it is. I'm doing the horizontal one first because I'm going alphabetically for some reason. So, okay. So you're telling me that Vx is going to be 35 cos 20? Uh, 32.889? Is that right? And Vy initial is going to be which trig function, Nicole? Sine, you say. 35 sine 20. 11.971. Oh, what else do I know? Vertical displacement? Which column do I know 3 things in? Because I asked you to. Which column do I know 3 things in? Because I asked you. Oh, I'll never get tired of that joke. Definitely the vertical column. I'll put the little t equal, because I know it said find the range. We're going to spend most of our time finding time. Looking for an equation that's got an A, a V, a D, and a T in it. Have you noticed we're flogging one equation pretty consistently for all of these? It's the quadratic one, D equals VIT plus a half AT squared. Vertical dy, Vy, Ay. So I'm going to get negative 20 equals 11.971 t minus 4.9 t squared. AJ, where'd the negative 4.9 come from? I have no idea what you said, I think. Or I multiplied it by 0.5, yeah. Quadratic because it's got a squared. Make it equal to 0. Hey, is it sunny outside right now? I'm feeling a little bold and adventurous. Let's just see. First of all, let me copy this out very carefully. I wonder if I can go straight to plugging in numbers in the quadratic formula without writing out the quadratic formula. On a test or a quiz, I would write out the quadratic formula, Justin, because I've made dumb mistakes there. But these are our notes. Let's see. T equals negative b. So positive 11.971 plus or minus the square root of negative 11.971 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. If you're getting comfortable enough with the quadratic formula, because you didn't buy a solver, that you can go straight to plugging in numbers in your homework, go ahead. Diego, I wouldn't on a test or a quiz, though. I'd still write it out. And in fact, Diego, I'm going to see if I can type this in now in one fell swoop. Diego, is this a fraction?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there more than one thing on the top? Yeah. So yeah. Start out with an open bracket. 11.971. Oh, already made a typo. Look at that. 11.971 plus square root, open a bracket. I'm not going to type the negative because I know the negative when I square it is going to vanish, and I'm lazy that way. So 11.971 squared minus 4 times a times c. Close off the square root. Close off the top. Divided by 9.8. Those of you with your fancy schmancy solvers, did you get 3.582413.856, I hope? Yeah. I'll go 3.58241. There's also a negative value. Do I care about the negative value? No, just like I don't care about Alec. Dunking. Sorry, dunking. Alec dunking. Sorry, that came out wrong. And I was going to say, and I'm done. No, I'm not. I haven't even found what the question asked. The what? What does it want me to find? Horizontal. Okay. What was Vx? 32.889? Ax was 0. My A's are looking more and more like 9s, which is confusing. That's better. That's only 2. Oh! 3.58241. Looking for an equation that's got a blah blah and a blah blah and a blah blah. Which one? dx equals vxt. No plus a half at squared. Oh, bonus. So it's going to be 32.889 times 3.58241. I'm using my answer button. Oh, I can't use my answer button because I got a different answer here. So I'll have to go 3.58241. 117.8, 118? I hope. No? Yes? That's a tough question. If you're getting that, I'm proud of you all. Finding the range if you give me the height. Do you know what's way, way easier? Finding the height if I give you the range. Calvin, the reason is you would start with this equation here, dx equals vxt. Calvin, how would you get the t by itself? Because you're still going to spend most of your time finding time. How would you get the t by itself in this equation? You mean I don't need to use the quadratic formula? I don't need to go plus or minus the square root of b squared? I don't have to do any of that? Oh, so if they give you the range and say find the height, you can get time horizontally, and then you'll use this equation to find the height, but the d is already by itself, so plug and chug. Complicated plug and chug, but not that complicated. Example 3. I agree. Okay. Uh-oh. I didn't give you the picture this time. Dope. Projectile is launched from a 45-meter high cliff, you say. Okay. And it says the cliff is 45 meters high. At an angle, do you say angle, of 64 degrees? With an initial velocity of 36 meters per second. By the way, can you see how, because I called that the initial velocity, it would be really tempting to put a 36 in for the VI, even though it's the slanty. We're never going to use it because it's neither vertical nor horizontal. It can't go in any column. A says find the range. Okay. Suggestions? I have to find time. So how will I do that? T-table and components. I'm going to do the rest of this question quietly, silently. Try this on your own. If you get stuck, look up. I'm not going to freeze the screen, but I'm going to try and go almost as fast as I can, except for the fact that I don't have a fancy schmancy solver. That's wrong. negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2l. Looks good. Whew. Cutting corners, I can do it a little faster than that, but not by much. Not with confidence. I can do it faster, taking the risk that I'll get it wrong. That's how I make up my answer keys. No, the kids will find the mistakes. Give them candy. Give you a couple more minutes. Those of you that got it right, I'm hoping this will be close to 7 free marks on your test. This will be a 7-mark written question. But you can also see how much potential room there is to make a typo, to make a, oops, I put a horizontal, or even just a trip on your brain. Why did I put the 9.8 in for the horizontal acceleration? Because we're so used to that being acceleration. Even something as basic, I've seen kids put Vy where Vx is in the horizontal column and Vx where Vy is. Do the rest of the question right, but there's no error on your calculator that will tell you that you've done it wrong. Okay, a couple more, we're done. We'll finish with part B here. Part B says, at what time does the projectile reach its maximum height? And how high is the maximum height? Well, definitely this is asking me to find a time when it reaches its what? Maximum what? Height. Do you think I'm going to solve this vertically or horizontally? Height? Vertical, yes? So we're not use any Vx stuff. So I definitely know AY is negative 9.8. And what was Vy initial? Vy initial 32.357. That's only 2 things. What? You are correct. I'm glad you were so careful. Good. Vy final is 0 at the top. In fact, overall V at the top is just whatever Vx was. Is it Vf equals Vi plus AT? Get the T by itself. T equals Vf minus Vi over A. 0 minus 32.357 all over negative 9.8. You all get 3.30 seconds? Austin nodding? Yeah. There's a second part to this question. What is the second half of the question you want me to find? How what? High. Vertical or horizontal? I think vertical, yes. In fact, I think we've argued, well, you know what? I'll call it, just for giggles, h, the height, I guess. Well, let's call it a vertical displacement. I'm not going to rewrite everything because I have it all listed here. How can I find the vertical displacement? Which equation? Loud and proud, Ren, you're right. And I'll just remind myself dy equals vy initial t plus a half ay t squared. Yeah, totally. In fact, I think I can plug and chug here. It's going to be 32.357 times my answer from part A. And we're at the stage now where I'm going to use an answer from part A. Like, live with it. It's quicker. Plus a half, negative 9.8, 3.3 squared. I wrote 3.3, but you know I'm going to use my answer button for each of these times, yes? So it's going to be 32.357 times answer button plus 0.5 times negative 9.8 times answer button squared. Double check for typos. That looks good. Do you get 53.4? Why must that be wrong? Look in brackets. What did I say the answer was? How the heck did I get a 98.4? What? This is all we've found is how high above where we started from. Did we start on the ground? No, no. Okay. So, you know what? Let's call it this way. Height is going to be dy plus d cliff. So it's going to be 53.4 plus, what was the height of the cliff? 45. Ah. Okay. That would be a good multiple choice question if I gave you most of these numbers. And you know as answer A, I would have 53.4 for kids to pick from. Just because. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Ren asked Mr. Dewick, look, instead of going a half times negative 9.8 on my calculator, can I just put a negative 4.9 and save myself the typing? Yeah. Is that what I do? Yeah, quite often when I'm in a rush. Braden, you stretching? I agree with you. No, I agree with you. We're going to pause here, okay? Questions that you're capable of doing if you go to the homework. First of all, get caught up. I'm missing stuff from a number of you. But number one, here are 5 different cliffs at angles. You'll probably need to dulp. It's the same generic picture, but I'm changing the theta and I'm changing the height of the cliff. Find time, find range. Okay? You can pass on question number 2. Number 3, I'm going to assign, but I need to do more examples of velocities. So if you want to leave a gap, Tomorrow, if you look at where we paused, it's finding another impact velocity practice question where you're going to add the components tip to tail and do some Pythagoras and stuff. So I'll assign it because technically I've done one of them with you, but we need to practice some more. 4, nah. 5, nah. 6 is good. 7 is good. 8 is good. 9 is good. 10 is good. And then I wrote here, Mr. Duke will also assign some questions from the ultimate review. I'll do that tomorrow because we're also just almost into Y block where you can kind of work on your own shtick anyways. Okay? So tomorrow we're going to finish off the unit. Tomorrow we'll finish off this lesson. Tomorrow I'll be giving you a take-home quiz. Thursday we'll mark the take-home quiz and we'll talk about when you want to write the test. Could almost write it Friday, but I think most of you would want the extra day. It just means I'm going to do a couple lessons on forces before the test, but whatever. F equals what? MA. Okay. Class is yours, my angels.